"We've put you on the patio, dear." My mother, Margaret, said it with that tight little smile she had perfected over 40 years of navigating the treacherous waters of River Oaks society. It was a masterpiece of social engineering, that smile, a carefully constructed facade that could convey pity, disappointment, and a vague sense of superiority, all while pretending to offer you a glass of sweet tea. The Houston heat in July was already a living thing, a heavy, humid blanket that clung to your skin and stole your breath, making the starched linen of my dress feel damp against my skin. But her words, they made the air feel even heavier, more suffocating. They carried the weight of decades of gentle dismissals, of being lovingly, carefully, put in my place. The main dining room is for, well, she adjusted the triple strand of Mikomoto pearls at her throat, a nervous little habit that always appeared when she was executing what she considered a delicate social maneuver. With all the business talk, the men get so loud, you know. Mergers and capital and such. It's just not your world, dear. All those numbers and computers. We thought you'd be more comfortable out here.
Ave, Frau Metall. You understand.
Oh, I understood. I understood so completely it ached in my bones, a familiar dull pain that had been my companion for most of my adult life. Through the gleaming, multi-paned French doors of the country club, I saw it all. The inner sanctum. My more successful siblings, the jewels in the Vance family crown, were gathered for my father's 70th birthday celebration. My brother, William Jr., or Will as he insisted, because Jr. lacked gravitas, was holding court. He was laughing, a braying sound that always seemed too loud for any room, resplendent in a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than my first car. Beside him, my sister, Charlotte, was a vision in ostentatious Versace, her diamonds flashing like distress signals under the grand crystal chandelier. They were the picture of success, the kind of success you could hang on a wall, tangible and shiny. The kind my father understood. And me? I was the picture you kept in a drawer, the faded one with the slightly awkward smile. I smoothed down the simple, dark linen dress I wore. It was loro piena, a detail that would be lost on them but gave me a secret, quiet satisfaction. It was my quiet rebellion, a whisper of wealth in their room of shouts. It cost more than Will's suit, but its value was in its understated perfection, a concept utterly foreign to my family. To them, wealth wasn't real unless it screamed its own name. On the patio, the scent of blooming magnolias mixed with the smell of freshly cut St. Augustine grass, tinged with the faint, chemical bite of pesticide. The string quartet inside was playing something by Vivaldi, a polite, elegant soundtrack to their self-congratulation. Out here, the only music was the drone of cicadas warming up for their nightly chorus and the lonely clinking of ice in my water glass. The patio was for disappointments. It was the overflow room for failed expectations. It was where you put the relative who might say the wrong thing, or worse, had nothing impressive to say at all. And tonight, under the vast, star-dusted Texas sky, that was me. The lone star of the family failures, watching the real success story unfold behind a wall of soundproof glass. My mind drifted back to another party, years ago, a lifetime ago. My college graduation. I'd finished top of my class, summa cum laude, with dual degrees in computer science and finance. An achievement I thought was significant. My father had thrown a party right here, at this very club. I remember standing near the grand fireplace, my cap and gown still feeling alien on my shoulders, trying to explain my thesis on algorithmic trading to a group of his business associates. So it's like, a robot that buys stocks? One of them had chuckled, a portly man named Henderson who ran an oil pipeline company. He swirled his brandy, looking at me as if I were a curious but ultimately irrelevant specimen, a child with a peculiar hobby. Before I could explain the nuance of machine learning and predictive analytics, before I could talk about the beauty of the code I'd written, Will had clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that was less brotherly and more of a subtle, public dismissal. "Don't mind my sister," he'd said with a wink to the group. "She lives in a world of ones and zeros. It's all Greek to us simple folk." Now, about that new land development out in Sugarland, Henderson, I think you'll find the returns far more tangible. And just like that, the circle of powerful men had closed, the conversation shifting seamlessly to land deals and oil futures, leaving me standing alone, my diploma feeling like a worthless piece of paper. My world of ideas, my world of the future, was invisible to them. That was the pattern. My achievements were abstract, digital, incomprehensible to them. Theirs were land, buildings, partnerships announced in the Houston Chronicle. Theirs were real. Mine was a hobby. Hey Ellie. Will's voice boomed, snapping me back to the present. He was at the open door, sloshing champagne. Enjoying the JV table? He smirked. But hey, at least you can watch the pros from out there, sis. I could see Charlotte inside, whispering to a friend and gesturing towards me with a flick of her wrist, her expression a perfect blend of pity and disdain. The friend, a woman whose face was pulled so tight she looked permanently surprised, giggled behind her hand. Charlotte then sashayed out, a predator in her natural habitat, drawn to the scent of perceived weakness. Her stilettos aerated the manicured grass. She wrinkled her perfectly powdered nose. Darling, that dress. It's so simple. And no jewelry? Bless your heart, you have to at least try to look successful. Appearance is everything in this town. You can't expect to land anyone decent looking like you're giving up. She leaned in, her perfume a suffocating cloud of tuberose and condescension. Though I suppose, she added with a pitying sigh, the making it part seems unlikely in your case. Have you thought about letting Mom set you up with John Hemphill's son? He's available. He works in insurance. A nice, simple man. Probably perfect for you. I just gave that small, non-committal smile, the one I'd perfected over decades. The one that was my shield against 1,000 tiny cuts. While she was appraising me like a piece of discount furniture, my phone was buzzing silently in my lap. A phantom limb, a secret connection to my real life. A text from my CFO, Kenji, in Tokyo, deal terms improved. Counterparty is anxious. They are folding on Clause 17B. Urgency critical. The markets will open in 3 hours 45 minutes. Another from my head of European operations, Isabel, waiting on the secure line from London with the final go/no-go from our legal team there. My mind was a world away, running through the final checklist. Antitrust clearance from the EU, confirmed. SEC filings, prepped and ready for submission. The press release, codenamed Project Phoenix, was queued. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, the future of an entire industry sector, all pivoting on a decision I would make from a wicker chair on a patio in Houston. $8 billion. The words had a physical weight. A legacy. A real one. Built not on dirt and steel, but on silicon and light. And it was all hanging in the balance while my family celebrated their miniature triumphs. They called my life's work, that little computer thing. They had no idea the garage had grown to span 3 continents. The game I was playing was about to make their entire world look like a child's piggy bank. And did you hear about Will's new partnership? Margaret gushed, loud enough for me to hear clearly. A $20 million deal in new business. He's a natural. Just like his father. I almost chuckled. 20 million. We had spent more than that on our server farm upgrade in Austin last month, an expense that didn't even require a board vote. Then, my father, William Sr., stood up. He tapped a knife against his glass, and the room fell into a reverent hush. His chest puffed out. To my son, Will.
Man vis atro vision for the Vance family legacy.
He knows what it takes to build something real, with dirt and steel, something you can stand on. He glanced briefly, dismissively, towards the patio. Not like these ephemeral things on screens. That's how you build a real legacy. The dining room erupted in polite, reverent applause. The legacy he was talking about was Vance Realty, a firm my granddaddy had started. Granddaddy Vance. He'd been the one who bought me my first computer, a clunky Tandy from Radio Shack. "The world's changing, Ellie girl," he told me, his voice raspy from a lifetime of unfiltered cigarettes. "It ain't just about what you can hold in your hand anymore. It's about what you can hold in your head. Don't you ever let anyone tell you your dreams are too small, or too newfangled." He would have understood. But he was gone, and with him, any sense of real vision in the family. Now, my father was toasting a ghost. A failing company that I, through a labyrinth of shell corporations, had secretly purchased 6 weeks ago. My forensic accounting team had worked for a month, untangling a mess of bad loans, over-leveraged assets, and Will's creative bookkeeping. He was steering the family legacy straight into a ditch. And I was the only one who had a tow truck big enough to pull it out. That's when we first heard it. A faint thump 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 in the distance. It was the wrong kind of sound for a place like this, a sound of industry, of purpose, cutting through the string quartet's gentle melody. Charlotte frowned. "What in the world is that noise? So disruptive. You'd think for the dues we pay, they could keep the riffraff out." But the sound grew. It wasn't riffraff. It was a rhythmic, powerful chopping that seemed to vibrate up from the ground, through the soles of my shoes. It rattled the silverware on my little patio table. The perfectly manicured hedges began to tremble. Then, it crested over the ancient oak trees. A sleek, black Bell 429 helicopter. It was a machine that looked like it was carved from a block of obsidian, all sharp angles and quiet menace. It bore down on the 18th fairway, the club's most prized piece of real estate, with an authority that couldn't be ignored. The wind from its massive rotors kicked up a storm of cut grass and scattered the garden furniture. Charlotte's perfect hair was whipped across her face. And as it hovered just feet above the ground, the setting sun glinted off the silver logo on its side, the unmistakable starburst of Starlight Technologies. My ride was here. The helicopter blades slowed as my head of security, James, a former Army Ranger with a face that looked like it was used to giving orders and not taking them, stepped out. He was the epitome of calm professionalism. He walked right past the main dining room, his eyes scanning and finding me immediately. He walked straight to the patio. Inside, the chatter had died. The entire dining room was pressed against the glass. "Miss Vance," James said, his voice crisp and clear. "The board is assembled and waiting on the secure line. The $8 billion acquisition requires your final signature to close before the Asian markets open in 3 hours." I heard a distinct crash. Will had dropped his champagne flute. "8 billion. My mother whispered, her hand flying to her pearls, not as a delicate gesture, but as if to check they were still real. My father stumbled out onto the patio, his commanding presence gone, his authority crumbling like old sandstone. "Eleanor," his voice cracked. "What in the Sam Hill is going on?" I finally allowed myself a real smile. Not the polite, accommodating one, but a smile that held 20 years of silent work and secret satisfaction. I pulled out my phone and showed him the breaking news alert. Tech giant Starlight Technologies in final stages of historic acquisition. CEO Eleanor Vance to close $8 billion deal. "Just my little computer thing, Daddy," I said softly. "The hobby you told me to stick to. The one that, by the way, secretly bought your struggling real estate firm last month to save the family legacy from your golden boy's vision." As if to punctuate my point, a second, smaller helicopter appeared, a nimble Eurocopter that landed gracefully beside the first. A young woman in a sharp suit emerged, carrying a reinforced briefcase. "That one's just bringing the paperwork," I said casually, enjoying the way their eyes widened, the way Will's face had gone the color of spoiled milk. When you're closing an $8 billion deal, you need proper transportation. And a notary. The silence on the patio was absolute. The pivot was so fast it was almost comical. "Eleanor, darling," my mother said, her voice suddenly sweet as molasses, rushing to my side and taking my arm. "We must rearrange the seating. This is absurd. The head of the table is for you, of course. It's far more appropriate." Will, his face pale and slick with sweat, plastered on his dealmaker smile. "Sis, listen," he said, stepping forward. "We should really talk. Explore some synergies between your operation and my vision for the firm." "My vision?" I raised an eyebrow, pulling my arm gently from my mother's grasp. "You mean the business I already own? The one you ran into the ground? That business?" I picked up my simple leather briefcase. I turned to my father. "I'm afraid I have to cut the birthday short," I said. "I have real business to attend to." Their desperate hollow words followed me all the way across the lawn. The days that followed were a symphony of frantic, phoning phone calls, texts, and emails. I let most go to voicemail, but I did answer one call from my mother. "Ellie Bell," she chirped. "Your father and I were just saying, we always knew you had it in you. That quiet determination. We're so proud." "Proud now?" I'd asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "You weren't proud when I was working 20-hour days in a rented office. You were embarrassed. You told your friends I was finding myself. There was a sputtering on the other end. "Well, we just didn't understand." "No, Mom," I'd said, cutting her off. "You didn't bother to try. There's a difference." I ended the call. The acquisition closed flawlessly. My net worth jumped by a figure that felt abstract even to me. The news was everywhere. My real work began then, integrating the new company. The week after my father's party, I was in a boardroom in Frankfurt, leading a 12-hour integration summit with the German executive team of the company we just acquired. They were skeptical, hardened engineers who looked at me, this quiet woman from Texas, with suspicion. I didn't give them a speech about synergy. I walked them, line by line, through the code of their own flagship product, pointing out 3 critical vulnerabilities and a dozen inefficiencies. I outlined my plan to not just fix them, but to use Starlight's platform to triple their processing speed. By the end of the day, I had their respect. That was real. That was satisfying. Meanwhile, back in Houston, Will was apparently imploding. I'd instructed my team at the newly acquired Vance Realty to give him a generous severance package and an NDA a mile long. He refused to sign it, demanding a meeting. I finally agreed to see him, not at my office, but in a neutral conference room downtown. He came in, not in his usual Tom Ford armor, but looking rumpled and defeated. "I don't understand, Ellie," he'd started, his voice a whine. "Why didn't you just tell us? We could have been partners." Partners. I'd looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time without the filter of family obligation. "Will, partnership requires trust and respect. You have never shown me either. You saw a hobby. You saw a little sister to be patronized. You never saw me." "But it's the family business," he'd pleaded. "You nearly destroyed the family business," I'd replied, my voice flat and cold. "I saved it. The difference is, I did it with competence, not bluster. Sign the papers, Will. It's the best deal you're ever going to get." He signed. With that loose end tied up, I turned my attention to another. From my corner office, I watched the city lights glitter. I buzzed my real estate division. "That property," I said, looking at a satellite image of the River Oaks Country Club. "I want you to make them an offer they can't refuse. A cash offer, well above market. Close it by the end of the month." My head of real estate whistled. "That's aggressive, Ms. Vance." "I'm feeling aggressive," I said. "And when they accept, the first policy change is that success doesn't have a designated dining room. And change the name of the patio. From now on, It's the Founders Terrace. The deal for the club closed 2 weeks later. The following Sunday, my family arrived for their traditional brunch to find a small, tasteful plaque by the entrance, a Starlight Technologies property. I was told Will nearly choked on his mimosa. Later that day, I received a text from my father, the first he had initiated in years. "We need to have a family meeting. At the club." I replied simply, "Book it through my office. And just so you know, I've reserved the Founders Terrace for you." You see, the thing they never understood, sittin' in their fancy dining room toasting their fragile egos, is that real success isn't loud. It's not a flashy suit or a European label. Real success is quiet. It's built in the dark, with grit and code and caffeine, while everyone else is distracted by the bright, shiny objects. It's substance, not style. Their doubt was the greatest gift they ever gave me. It was the fuel. It was the silence in which I could build without distraction. While they were busy looking successful, I was busy becoming it. Success isn't about finally getting a seat at their table. It's about building a table so big, so solid, so undeniably magnificent, that theirs looks like a rickety TV tray in comparison. Welcome to my empire.